Hey, this is Nate. In today's video, we're going to talk about the top 5 questions that you should ask when purchasing a domain name for your new business. And at the end, I'm going to give you a specific bonus, something you probably haven't ever heard about when it comes to domain names. Let's get started. Getting a new domain name for your business can be scary. It's like naming your first child. What if you get it wrong? What if it's awkward? What if people make fun of it? What if your name doesn't fit the baby, or in this case, your new business? So to help you alleviate some of that fear, I'm going to go over 5 questions you can ask yourself before you buy a domain name for your new business. Question number 1. Does the domain name represent what I do in some way? In the past, I've purchased domain names both for myself and for clients that have a keyword phrase in the domain. For example, attorneyspanishforkutah.com. Everyone, including Google, is going to know what that business is all about. And some people think you will rank for that keyword phrase pretty quickly in Google just because that whole phrase is in your domain. In the past, that was true, but nowadays it's not. In fact, according to Google's John Mueller, a keyword-rich domain name does not have that much value in Google rankings, and in fact, it may even affect your rankings. Here's what John says. Just because a new website has a keyword in its domain name doesn't mean that it's more relevant than others for that keyword. In short, you don't need to put keywords in the domain name. About 3 years ago, my initial domain name that I purchased for my business was molarmarketing.com. Just like answering the question we just talked about, yes, it represented what I do, marketing, and Molar is my last name. But as I've grown and expanded, I've realized that domain name wasn't very brandable or recognizable. So I changed it to Web 801. Web is what I do, all things web, or many things web related. And 801 is where I'm located. It's the area code of where I live. Including at least a partial keyword phrase in your domain name can be helpful because then people know what you're doing and it relates to what you're offering. But you don't have to focus on a long keyword phrase rich domain to make it brandable and help people know what you're offering. Another important factor in helping your domain name be brandable is making sure you get the .com. There are lots of other suffixes now. .jobs, .farms, .travel, .office, .tv, .net. All of these are fine, but according to John Mueller at Google, again, they don't help that much. John Mueller from Google also answered this question, whether or not those suffixes help us get better rankings in search. Here's his answer. This is a really common question that comes up for the new top-level domains. In short, no. You don't get a special bonus like that from having a keyword in your top-level domain. Anecdotally, you can see that by searching naturally for anything that interests you. I'd venture a guess that the top results don't have those keywords as a domain ending. Often it's not even in the URL at all, and that's by design. If you're having a hard time finding a domain name with the .com, keep looking. .com is the most common suffix. It's like when I tell you to call a toll-free number. You're probably going to think 1-800. It's the exact same with a website. The .com is what people remember. And even if I had the domain name natemolar.net, most likely people would go to natemolar.com, and if that happened to be a competitor, I would lose traffic to my site. So get the .com. Question number 2. Is the domain name easy to spell and easy to remember? One of the ways to address this question is my domain name potentially spelled multiple ways? For example, how would you spell the word to? Wrong. It's not TWO. Wrong. It's not TO. Wrong. It's not TOO. Or if you speak Spanish, it could even be TU. The correct answer, it's the number 2. So you get my point. If I can spell that word multiple ways, someone will, and you will lose traffic. And you don't want to lose traffic to someone that has a random spelled domain name. If you can spell the domain name in multiple ways, people will spell it wrong and you will lose traffic. Another part of spelling your domain name or easy to spell is avoiding the same letter multiple times together in the domain. For example, theelephanttitle.com. Apologies if this is an actual domain name, I've just made this up, but the and then elephant, is that 1 E or is that 2? Same with elephant and title, is that 1 T or is it 2? That's confusing. People will spell it wrong, they'll leave one out, and then they'll think your website's broken or you're no longer in business. Another factor in answering that question about easy to spell and easy to remember is keeping it short. I usually recommend no longer than 2 to 3 words, if possible. If you can get a 1-word domain, that's ideal, but sometimes that will be very expensive. So 2 words is generally great to target, and 3 can be effective. When I first started my businesses back in 2006, I bought the domain name clogon.com. This was a hobby that I had been involved in for most of my life, clogging. And so eventually I found a domain name called clogon.com. I ended up selling clogging shoes, but the domain name represented what I was about. It was brandable, it was easy to spell, it was easy to remember, and it ended up being a home run for my website. Another example that I'll tell you about is a client of mine that their domain name used to be beautifulweddingannouncements.com. Yes, that's 3 words, but the domain name is really long. So eventually I convinced the client to change the domain to shopbwa.com. That didn't mean they had to change their business name. It didn't mean they even had to change their logo. But Shop BWA was much easier to spell and much easier to remember. In fact, if you go to their website today and you typed in beautifulweddingannouncements.com, it would redirect to Shop BWA, so it's fine. They didn't lose traffic, and the domain name is just much easier to remember. Even I, who knew the domain name, would spell it wrong from time to time. So you can imagine what new clients or prospects would do with that domain name. So again, keep your domain name short, easy to spell, which will make it easy to remember. Question number 3, would I put the domain name on a t-shirt, a hat, a hoodie, or a sticker, or even on my car? If my domain name is really long, or really complex, or hard to spell, heck no would I put that on a hat or t-shirt. In fact, that's why I changed my domain name about 3 years ago from molarmarketing.com to web801.com. Because Molar, not only did it get pronounced a variety of different ways, Mueller, Miller, Mahler, whatever, but it also got spelled wrong. M-O-E, M-U-E, M-U, M-I. It was just confusing. Not only is Web801 easy to spell and easy to remember, but it encourages curiosity. People think, I wonder what that is. They go to the website and potentially I have a new client. So as you're going through domain name options, think about whether you'd put it on a t-shirt or hat or branding materials, and if that would be easy to fit on a t-shirt. Question number 4, are you in this for the long haul? I'm going to address a couple things with this question. In this for the long haul. One of those is, make sure you buy your domain name at a place that can support you well if you have questions about your domain. The 2 places I recommend most are GoDaddy or Google Domains. Not only are they great for customer support, but they are focused for the most part on domain name registration. There are other places, in fact, many places you can buy a domain. Bluehost, HostGator, InMotion Hosting, all these hosting places that also help you buy a domain name. What I've found though is if I decide to host my website somewhere else and I stop paying for the hosting, sometimes they'll just shut down my site completely or stop the domain and everything. So I want to have a place where I can go register my domain name and feel at ease that it can be hosted wherever I want to host it. Both GoDaddy and Google Domains are very helpful in that way. Another component to think about with this question, if you're in it for the long haul, is how long you register your domain name for. When you register a domain, you have multiple options. So when you buy a domain name with all these options, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, sometimes the question comes up, does how long I registered the domain name for affect my potential rankings in Google? Search Engine Land addressed this question. Google isn't specifically saying domain name registration length doesn't matter, just that it's not all that important in the big picture. Several years ago, I interviewed John Glick, a former member of the Yahoo search team, and he said the length of a registration does matter, but it's just one signal and one potential flag. In other words, search engines do recognize how long you register your domain name for, so I recommend at least registering it for 2 to 3 years if you're just getting started. Question number 5, what if I don't follow these suggestions that we've talked about? Or in other words, can I change my domain name later? The answer is absolutely. As we talked about earlier, I had Moeller Marketing for about 15 years before I changed it recently to Web 801. If you're just starting a new business, there are lots of questions and lots of decisions you have to make. It can feel overwhelming. But you want to avoid the paralysis by analysis, which means you think about it, you contemplate, you go back and forth, and you end up doing nothing. Get a domain name. Try to follow these rules, these suggestions, and just get a domain name, and you can always change it. In fact, if you have a reliable web agency, they'll know how to change it for you so you don't lose traffic. It's called a 301 redirect. That way someone can type in your old domain and it will just redirect to the new domain just like that. And search engines you will not lose rankings for a 301 redirect. Sure, changing a domain name can be complicated. You might have to change other things as well, like your logo, for example. But at least you get started and you're not waiting and waiting and waiting. Now a bonus. The bonus I want to tell you about is this. When you do research on GoDaddy or Google Domains for a domain, sometimes you're going to find one that says premium domain, and it might start at $10,000 or even $1,000 or $3,000. It's just going to be a lot more expensive. If you're just getting started, unless money is no issue at all, I would avoid that. You don't want to get a domain that you think, oh, this is the home run, and then eventually you change the direction you're going and that domain has nothing to do with what you're offering. I've had clients do that where they've found a domain, they paid for $5,000 for it, and then it didn't really relate to what they're doing anyway. And that's just hard to swallow. So start with an inexpensive domain. Start with one that's like $15 to $17 a year. Get it for a few years. Make sure it's brandable, easy to spell, easy to remember. And then let's get your website live so you can start making deals on your website. I'm Nate from Web 801. I hope these questions have been helpful to you today. They've really helped me as I've not only built my own businesses, but helped hundreds of other clients build theirs as well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more videos like this, make sure to subscribe. And leave a comment if you have additional questions about your domain name. Talk to you soon.